What's up, everyone? Hope you're all doing well tonight. On tonight's episode of The Good Guy Drinks Whiskey, my special guest is Wine Enthusiast 2017's Mixologist of the Year, author of the Spirits and Drink book, I'm Just Here for the Drinks, owner of the Brooklyn Tasting Room, Amor y Amargo, and the Speakeasy Podcast host, Sother Teague. Sother and I are going to drink through 6 different drams that I gave him. We'll talk a little bit about his past and his current projects. So without further ado, let me invite him onto this chat. Thank you for taking the time tonight to join me for a few drams. For anybody listening, I gave you 6 different drams, 5 whiskeys, 1 rum, and we're going to taste through them, and I'll ask you some questions throughout just about your background and some of the things you're doing. Tell us a little bit about your background in terms of whiskey drinking and kind of how often do you drink whiskey neat?
I would say that, whiskey is probably the second most thing I drink, second to Amari, right? I own a bar called Amor y Amargo. We have the world's largest collection of potable and tincture bitters. So I drink, as you can imagine, an inordinate amount of those things. But I would also caveat that by saying the overwhelming majority of the whiskey that I drink is American whiskey. Mm-hmm. So, this is going to be a great, as you said when you sent these to me, or as I said to you when you sent these to me, I was like, great, I haven't tried any of these. All right. So this is going to be pretty blind for me.
No, that's great. So are you into bourbons, ryes, American single malts? Like, what's your background?
I like all American whiskey, but I lean much more heavily down the rye side of the road. Before the pandemic, I had a bar called Honeybees, which was all we had were American whiskeys, nothing else. All my bars are quite specific. Amor y Amargo is all about Amaro. Honeybees was all American whiskey. I have a bar now called Etheria, which is all tequila and mezcal. I've got a bar called Café de l'Enfer that's champagne and absinthe. What we do, whenever I do something, I like to be, pretty specific about what it is, so we can really dive in and get a good idea of what that category is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds awesome. All right, that's great then. So the lineup I sent you, 5 of them are Scotch whiskeys. The final one is a rum pour. I always like to finish on something sweet and bold, so that'll be our last pour for the night. So the first one we're going to go with tonight is the Compass Box Oak Cross.
Compass Box, no name. Compass Box Oak Crossing. All right, cool.
All right, so the Oak Cross is a blended malt whiskey. So of course that means it's a bunch of single malts from different distilleries blended into a blended malt. And in this particular blend, I think I have it on your vial. We've got 47% 11-year-old Clynelish, 39% what Compass Box calls their Highland malt blend, which is basically Tanninic, Dailuaine, and I think maybe Clynelish is in that one too. And then 14% 11-year-old Dailuaine. And the reason why I'm starting with this one is because A, it's the lowest ABV, so it's the best to acclimate our palates to the high alcohol content. And it's also matured in ex-bourbon barrels for the most part, so it's a little bit softer, a little bit more gentle on the palate in that sense too.
Cool. Plus, Compass Box is a pretty relatively new company, right?
They started in 2000, so they're about 22 years in. So it's one of the more highly regarded blenders out there in terms of blended malt or blended scotches in general. It has a cult following now where people rave about Compass Box. And this one is just a really nice, pleasant one. It follows a similar line of like a Johnny Walker, maybe a little bit more interesting than that because it uses Clynelish, which is a common component in Johnny Walker, and it uses Dailuaine, which is also another part of their blends.
Well, I remember these guys maybe back in 2011 or 12, mm-hmm. Or maybe even as late as 13. Time is skewed because of the pandemic, but I remember when they came out with the Peat Monster.
Yeah.
Which was their big, crazy, overly smoked. But we had it on the bar at Amor y Amargo to make cocktails with Amaro. It was delicious.
Yeah. Yeah, no, without a doubt. I know Peat Monster is still one of their core range whiskeys out there. And it is just a nice, pleasantly peated whiskey, fairly young for the most part, but one that's really enjoyable. And what do you think of this one? What's your first sip impression?
Yeah, first sip is, you kind of nailed it on the head. It's really soft and easy drinking. Mm-hmm. It's got some, I don't know, really light notes of that, petrol that we're accustomed to in scotches, and definitely almost zero smoke or peat, right?
Yeah, this is an unpeated whiskey, so
Yeah, none.
yeah, so you won't get any peat on this one, and yeah, it's a younger one. I can get some of that maltiness in there as well.
Yeah.
But overall, just a really nice, pleasant whiskey, and this will set the tone basically for the rest of the night. Where each subsequent pour will be a little bit nicer because of our palates kind of being coated in this nice, gentle Scotch whiskey.
Right. We're layering paint on our tongues.
That is exactly what we're doing. Yeah. So each one will be a little bit bolder, a little bit richer. So as we progress down here. So you started off your career in the culinary world. How did that kind of get kicked off? Where did you get your start, and what kind of inspired you to pursue that career path?
I think I don't know. That's a great question. No one's really asked it in that way before. Yes, I was a chef for about 12 years before getting moving to the front of the house.
Mm-hmm.
But in a strange way, I had kind of flip flopped already. My dad owned a bar when I was a kid, so like I'd already done. I remember hauling cases of beer up the stairs when I was 12 years old for quarters that I would immediately put into the Pac-Man and Space Invaders machine that he had in his bar. So he's getting his money right back.
Yeah.
A great deal for him. But then, something turned my attention to the kitchen, and I kind of fell in love with the sort of creativity that was available there, and pursued it pretty aggressively. And then, in fact, went to culinary school, which I think was a great learning experience for me, but not necessarily about food and cooking. I graduated with great ease. I graduated valedictorian in my class. So I think, when I look back, I think maybe I shouldn't have done it. It was money not well spent, but the experience of it, being around people, sort of that kind of thing was great. And then networking and connections that I made while I was there were great as well. And then, I don't know, I pursued that for a long time and I really enjoyed it. And then I got the opportunity accidentally to be behind a bar for what was supposed to be short term. I promised I would do it for 6 months, and I stood behind that bar for 3 years, and now I've been bartending for 22 years.
That's really cool. And is that what you still do today? Are you still working the front end of the restaurant?
Yeah,
bars?
I mean, I operate and own bars. I don't get to get behind the bar as often as I'd like anymore. I'm really just the pickup guy. When we have someone who needs a night off or is sick or COVID, a lot of them behind the bar because of that still. And I have multiple locations that I'm behind. I used to, for 9 straight years, it was nothing but Amor y Amargo, or seven straight years, it was nothing but Amor y Amargo. And then I started opening other bars and working at those as well. But it's rare that I'm behind the bar. I'm never on the schedule, but it still happens.
Did you have some sort of work on Alton Brown's Good Eats at some point?
Sure, yeah. I was the research and technical chef for that show for a few seasons. Alton and I met years prior when he was in culinary school. He did his internship at a restaurant where I was the sous chef, so he was my intern. That's how we met. And his whole goal of going to culinary school, he said it from the very beginning to all his instructors, etc. I'm here to learn so that I can put he'd already got a degree in film and film studies. He's like, I want to know how to do this so that I can film it. So he said that to us even while he was my intern. And then a couple of years later, he reached out to me and asked me to join the team when he got the show off the ground.
And was there ever like a meal or a dish that kind of was like an epiphany for you, saying like, this is what I want to do. This is something that I love?
No, I don't think so. And I think that's easily identified by the fact that I did not stay with it. I do enjoy some aspects of cooking, and I still do some of those things at home. But what it was, honestly, for me was, not to be boastful or anything, but somewhat of a natural talent. I'm just very good at it, and it paid my way, and it paid my way well, so I stayed with it. And then I found something else that I was, at the time, maybe not as good at, but I liked it more. So I moved in that direction. I don't want to put myself on the wrong level by saying this, but the analogy that I've used in the past is like, Michael Jordan was great at basketball, but he really wanted to play baseball, right? So I left behind the thing I was better at to move into something that maybe I wasn't as good at, but unlike Michael, I stuck with it and became better at it, right?
So any additional thoughts on the Oak Cross, on the whiskey that we're trying right now?
I mean, this is easily drinkable, very delicious. Shocking, that you said it's the lowest one of the day, but 43% is still a medium high proof to just be drinking. But I could sip on this in any weather, anywhere, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and so and the Oak Cross, and another fun fact: this is a discontinued bottle. So once it dries up from the shelves, they're no longer making the Oak Cross. And if if you involve yourself more in the whiskey community, the more you're in it, the more high strength whiskeys you tend to gravitate towards, just because it offers more creativity in terms of diluting it down to different ABVs and having different whiskey experiences, or spirit experiences in that sense. So 43%. I don't have many bottles on my shelf that are below 46%. Most of them are 46 or above. So that's why we were starting off with this one. Are you ready for dram number 2? All right, so dram number 2 is from a distillery called Dailuaine. It's not a commonly known one. It is a Speyside distillery used mostly for fillers in Johnny Walker blends, and some Compass Box, as we just mentioned. This particular one is an independent bottling of Dailuaine 23. It's from Signatory, which is one of my favorite independent bottlers. It's distilled in 97, bottled in 2021, and bottled at 51% ABV. And this one is matured in hogshead, so basically barrels that once held, or casks that once held bourbon. So that's a common, simple maturation for a Scotch whiskey.
Sure. Well, I am Scottish, and I'll tell you, it is my people who invented the word frugal. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that that's got to be a big part of the reason why the Scots don't use new barrels, right? They buy the barrels that have been used because they're cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can find single malts that use virgin oak casks, but being able to use casks that were used for something else helps impart different complexities and intrigue in the barrel. So that's that's part of the nice thing about Scotch whiskey that you don't get in a bourbon, where you have to use virgin oak, you have to have 51% corn. It's much more limited in terms of what you can do. With this, you can use a whole array of different whiskeys.
Yeah.
So what do you think of this one?
This one, comparatively to the one we just drank, comes off with a lot more sweetness, like a very honeyed background.
Yep. Yeah. It's definitely a little spicier with that higher ABV. We went up to 51%. But yeah, I agree with you. I get lots of tropical fruits. Maybe some pineapple in there, some apples. And just a really nice, creamy mouthfeel. I really like this. This is actually one of my all-time favorite whiskeys, and the reason why we're having it second is just because the cask maturation and the ABV kind of went into line with this order. And I usually like to have my premium whiskeys earlier in the lineup, because you don't want to saturate your palate too much and then not be able to appreciate what you're drinking. Yeah, but the Dailuaine 23, an all-time favorite of mine, and a distillery that most people don't know about, which is why, value-wise, a 23-year-old whiskey like this, if it were a Macallan, let's say, you'd be paying $400 or $500 for it. This one you can get for around $150 to $170 if you buy it abroad, which is an incredible value for this whiskey experience.
Yeah, I do get. You said pineapple, and
yeah,
I kept thinking about it, and I get it's like it's stewed pineapple. It's not like a roasted or grilled, but like simmered in a pot pineapple.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm hoping this will encourage you to expand into some, explore some more Scotch whiskeys down the road.
I need very little encouragement.
All right. Very good. I think we're going in the right direction then.
I'm pretty easily pushed into trying new things, especially in the spirit world. And it's not that I don't drink Scotch. It's that it's just not my first choice when I'm out and about doing my thing. And I think that you often, and you've, I'm sure, done the same, and anyone who's watching today or later, you wind up either on purpose or inadvertently surrounding yourself with people who enjoy the same things you enjoy. So suddenly we're all gifting each other the same kinds of things, or when we're out and about together, we're buying the same kinds of things. And that's just how it kind of goes. I do have, as I mentioned, a pretty heavy interest in Amaro, of course. I used to have an all-American whiskey bar, which I was interested in. I'm really interested in tequila and to a lesser degree, mezcal. But this doesn't mean that I'm an equal opportunity imbiber. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always encourage all my followers or anybody who reaches out to me to explore all types of spirits, all types of alcohols, because that it helps build out your palate, and then you might find some some drink that you can really connect with and grow with. So I'm always encouraging people, and like you said, once you find your niche, you kind of always hang out with those like-minded people. Part of my platform, the reason why I created it was because I wanted to try to reach people who aren't really thinking about Scotch or whiskey in general, and be like, listen, if you approach this stuff right, you can really learn to appreciate the complexities and the intrigue, and how one little sip of this whiskey can offer a whole world of different flavors and experiences that are just few things can kind of offer an experience like that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Scotch definitely has the opportunity to show you a lot of things like that, from the flavor notes that you can pull out and the aromatic qualities that you can pull out that have little or nothing to do with the terroir or location. You know, not a lot of pineapples hanging around in Scotland.
No, definitely
right?
not.
But we get tropical fruit notes, often banana, pineapple, even hints of mango off Scotches all the time.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, we get all kinds of crazy floral products that are definitely, traditional or local. But I think that it's a unique property that you can, we travel the world in the glasses that we lift, right?
Absolutely, and that's one of the beautiful things about Scotch whiskey in general, is because the gamut of flavors are so extreme. Like, you have a barrel that's aged by the coast, you get some of those the saltiness from the air. You can do peated whiskeys and the different cask maturations. I mean, the flavor profiles and the experiences you can have, and which is why I've got so many bottles behind me. Each of them offer a different experience that is just absolutely wonderful.
I got a bunch of stuff over here. You just can't see it.
I believe you.
I'll spin the camera before we're done here. You'll see my books and my booze.
Yeah, no, that sounds perfect.
But I try not to hang on to too much stuff. Sometimes I get more things given to me that I can keep up with drinking.
Yeah.
But I often and always say two things about my collection that are very important. One, I'm a consumer, not a collector. Nothing here isn't meant to be drank, right? And to reinforce that statement, I always say, this bar is an amusement park, not a museum. We're not here to look at these things and admire them. We're here to ride these rides and put them away wet.
Yeah, no, and that's the mindset I go in with too. I do try to focus on certain bottles at any given time, just so I can kind of go through them more quickly. But then I run into this issue, is that I buy a bottle, it's reasonably priced, and then you don't think about it for a year or two, and then you realize, all right, this is worth so much more than the whiskey experience is gonna offer, and then you struggle with, like, how can I justify opening this bottle, because there's no way this is going to be $1,000 drinking experience, but that's what people are paying for it now, and that can be a little bit of a struggle.
I got none of those struggles, man.
All right.
If I get it, I open it. I can give you an example. A couple of years ago, I guess it's 4, maybe 5 years ago now, I had the opportunity to buy a case of Old Overholt Rye Whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
That happens to be sort of my favorite everyday drinker for the rye whiskey category. Longest continuously produced rye whiskey, that's great. But I bought that case of whiskey from the auction house at Sotheby's. Yeah. And it was from 1909. So not only, like super pre-pro juice. I spent more than a year's rent, more than my New York City rent for a case of whiskey, meaning more than a month's rent per bottle. Which made me reevaluate the definition of alcoholism. It's not about how much you consume; it's about how much you spend. And then we drank it all. It's gone.
No, and that's great, because that's what it's meant for, right? Now let me ask you this: you have this super antique rye whiskey, and part of the enjoyment of any whiskey is the story that goes behind it, that enhances it, the people you drink with. Now, if you were to drink that rye in a blind tasting with other ryes, do you think you would be able to say this one was the vintage, this was the unique one?
I think so, because it had so many unique properties. I think so, because we all agreed, and by the way, when we first cracked open the first bottle, in the room was Dave Wondrich, noted cocktail historian. He actually spoke at the event. There was only 10 of us in the room. Dave Pickerell was there. The departed Dave Pickerell, one of the most noted distillers in America. Alton Brown happened to be in the room that night as well. So some relatively discerning palates were on hand, and I think that overwhelmingly we all thought it drank a lot more like an old brandy, because it had been sitting in those bottles since 1909. It had a very fruit forward nose and approach. It had a very rich and thick mouthfeel, even though the shoulders were pretty high, none of them had evaporated very much.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think it stuck out in that if it were in a blind tasting with a group of ryes, I would be like, this one doesn't taste like rye.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's really cool too. I mean, and that's like an event whiskey. That's something that you sit back, you appreciate the history and the times that it was created, and then all the time in between the time it was bottled and drunk. I mean, that's such a cool experience without a doubt, and honestly, probably worth a year's worth of rent just because of the experience. And
sure, we got to taste through time, and what we did that night is we opened up just one bottle. And everyone got an ounce. That's it. But everyone got as much current day Overholt as they could drink, included in the price. But we reminded them not to try and compare them in any way. Yeah. And the way that I said it, Dave got up and gave a little talk about the Old Overholt distillery, et cetera, in the family. But the way that I described it was to say, look, if you went down to the store today and you bought a bag of Oreos and you reached your hand in and you pulled one out and it was dipped in white chocolate and had a raspberry center and it had sprinkles on the outside, but the bag says Oreos.
Yeah.
So this bottle says Overholt, but a lot of things have changed. There's a different still, a 3-compartment still, which no one at the time was using. Todd Leopold has started using one now. I don't know if you heard about that, but it's fascinating.
No.
It was a different grain bill. It was a different location. It was Broadford, Pennsylvania instead of Bardstown, Kentucky. So the temperature was different in the rick house. It was aged a minimum of 6 years, where currently it's 4 years. The maximum is 4 years. It was bottled at a higher proof, where it's lower now. So everything was different, but it still said Overholt on the label. So I was saying, don't compare these two, but enjoy the fact that you're getting to taste one from a time gone by.
Yeah, without a doubt. In that case, a name is just a name. I mean, you really shouldn't even compare different batches of a whiskey that's released nowadays. But to compare a modern day rye from a distillery of the same name to one from 1909 is a completely different experience entirely.
And sure, because all of those things changed incrementally and slowly. And now here we're just seeing the light switch. This one versus this one. It's just so radically different.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. That's such a cool story. All right, so pour number 3, we're going to go with the Ancnoc 24-year-old. Now, this is a Highland Scotch whiskey from the Knock Dew distillery. Their bottle brand is Ancnoc. And this one is a bottle at 46%, so a little bit softer than the last one, and is a combination of ex-bourbon and ex-sherry cask. So we'll get some of those darker fruits, raisins, some prunes maybe, mixed up with some of those tropical fruits.
All right, here we go. Yeah, automatically get some oxidization, right?
Yep, yep.
The aroma of, yeah.
You can definitely get that sherry on the nose, without a doubt.
Yeah, and that's where that's coming from, right?
Yep.
Even maybe like not toasted almonds, but just a bag of untoasted raw almonds. Mm-hmm. Like kind of a clean nutty, not so like peanutty.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Oh man, I gotta say, this is it's a little bit sharper. Mm-hmm. I like how it's drying my palate much quicker. I think of the 3 so far, this is my preferred.
Yeah, this one is an incredible one, and this is a favorite among whiskey enthusiasts because it's a relatively unknown distillery. Not many people know Knock Dew, not many people know Ancnoc. And then the value is insanely good for this bottle. A 24-year-old whiskey, you're thinking it's going to be hundreds and hundreds of dollars. This one in today's market can be bought for around $150, which is an incredible deal for a 24-year-old whiskey. I mean, you just don't see that in the marketplace anymore. And this is abroad, of course. I buy most of my whiskey from the UK because it's more affordable in general. But this one really just delivers an incredible sherried whiskey experience.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it reads like a Scotch old-fashioned in the glass.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
It's got a little bit, like it already has like a sort of cocktail quality. If you just poured this over a large cube with a twist, you could sell this as an old-fashioned.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I've once heard single malt whiskey referred to as a single ingredient cocktail, and this would be the perfect embodiment of that. Do you have a favorite whiskey-based cocktail, like your go-to?
Let's see. Honestly, if we're talking Scotch whiskey specifically, I would say I don't have a whiskey-based one, but the penicillin is finished. Sam Ross's penicillin from his Milk and Honey days in Attaboy. That drink is finished with a little small float of a heavily peated Scotch. He typically uses Lafroig, I believe, 10-year. But whiskey, Scotch whiskeys seem to have a bad rap in the cocktail compendium. I think it's a little bit of a tug of war between both the Scotch nerds and the cocktail nerds, and that the Scotch nerds don't think that they should be mixing their Scotch into cocktails. And I think they've won out, right? The cocktail nerds have decided, okay, you're right, I'll move on. I'll use Irish whiskey. I'll use American whiskey, which are both commonly found in cocktails.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good question as well. I don't think I can come up with the name of even a single Scotch whiskey-based cocktail. Like the first thing that comes to mind is a Tipperary, but that's Irish whiskey as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. I actually listened to one of your the Speakeasy Podcast episodes where you had Brendan the Ardbeg rep from, this was like 5 years ago, and you guys discussed that a little bit, how there's not a ton of Scotch-based cocktails, and it would be a little bit trickier because there's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of layers to a Scotch whiskey. So creating a unique cocktail that kind of complements some of those layers would be the way to go if you're trying to make a cocktail with it.
Yeah, I mean, we use a lot of blended Scotch at Amor y Amargo. Blended Scotch goes very well with Amari and vermouth and bitters. But again, that's not our go-to is honestly Dewar's. I love Dewar's. Our go-to is Famous Grouse. I love Famous Grouse and Dewar's. Dewar's is what I drink every time I get on an airplane. I don't know why. And then Famous Grouse is what we use at the bar. But it's got enough honey, it's got enough structure, it's got enough ABV, it's got enough of those qualities that we can manipulate them into the cocktail. Whereas I think oftentimes like this is, like I said, sort of almost like an old fashioned on its own in the glass. To add an Amaro, which is so brutal and heavy hitting, to add, if we're going to maybe shake a drink, to add some citrus to this, to add some kind of, crazy syrup, you're going to do more taking away than adding.
Yeah, I think once you get to some of those more, well-aged Scotch whiskeys, or some of the ones that have a bunch of different unique characteristics, it's probably best left alone. Or maybe I always keep my little dropper of water if I add a few drops to kind of mellow it out. But I think if you're going to make a Scotch-based cocktail, and I know nothing about mixology, so I apologize if I sound ignorant here. But some of those.
But I would back you up, and I would say I disagree. You know a lot about mixology on the macro instead of micro level. The first one you gave me, you said it's got these percentages of different products. That's mixology, baby.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in a little bit different terms, because at the end of the day, that's what even a single malt Scotch is, mixology. Because a single malt Scotch, the distillers and the master distiller is taking barrels of different ages and just putting it into a big vat and mixing it up. They have to create a flavor profile that they're looking for. So it's all mixology at the end of the day.
Which I think is where the true craft and maybe even a little bit of magic comes into play. Grabbing a single barrel and deciding I'm going to bottle this barrel, that's pretty easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's only so many. The barrel only holds so much, so there's only so many. The hard part is making the blends. The hard part is being consistent. The hard part is, delivering year over year over year the product that you promise.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. The mixing is the challenge. Granted, single barrels, you do need to pick the best barrels to bottle, or else it's going to be a dud. But that's a lot easier than actually figuring out, well, which combination do I need to put into this vat in order to make a whiskey. And we did have a few comments here for people recommending Scotch-based cocktails. Somebody said a Blood and Sand. I'm not sure what that is.
Man, the Blood and Sand. Can we pause and talk about that drink? I would have brought it up, but it's a fucking garbage cocktail. Can I swear on that? It's blood orange. It's supposed to be blood orange juice with Scotch and I can't even remember what, because it's such a terrible drink that no one makes it anymore. The problem is, and it's a I think somewhat, I won't say universal, but a somewhat accepted notion in the cocktail compendium that orange juice is simply a bad mixer. It's too sweet, it's too flabby, it's not tart enough. So when I had my days at Booker and Dax, where we were tinkering around with every possible ingredient. You know, we wouldn't leave the water alone. We would add minerals and things to the water to make it different, so we'd have different ice. Yeah. So we would acid adjust the orange juice until it was the same acidity level as lime juice. Mm-hmm. And then we could make a decent, cocktail using it, and we would make, blood and sand with blood orange juice. But it just largely not a good cocktail. It just exists because it has a great name and a great story. It was named after a movie of the same name that was about a bullfighter, blood in the sand. Not a great cocktail. Sorry to trash that one out of the gate, but
no, yeah. So if I ever see that on if I ever see that on a cocktail menu, I will be sure to pass on it.
I would encourage you honestly to not pass on it, to get one and understand maybe what I'm saying, and also just as you mentioned, the only way we come to the conclusions that we come to is by tasting lots and lots of things, and hopefully stocking those notions away in our memory Rolodex of tastes and flavors, so that we can call upon them later and have a better understanding.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I guess it makes sense to. You have to taste everything and figure out what makes sense, what the best combinations are.
You cannot simply taste good things and then have an understanding for what good things are. You must taste things that are abjectly bad so that you have a reference point.
Yeah, without a doubt. Somebody else mentioned a rusty nail.
Is that rusty nail? Fine. I'm not gonna throw out the rusty nail, but when's the last time you ordered one? I would ask, when's the last time the person who said that ordered one? Also, the Godfather. There are some Scotch cocktails. They're just not that great. Yeah. Until someone knocks one out of the park and makes a great Scotch cocktail, I think it's worth exploring, but it's also worth maybe that's just the one you leave alone. Maybe we just don't need to make cocktails out of good Scotches,
Yeah.
Like I said, we use Famous Grouse on the bar a lot. It is my only blended Scotch. Currently my only single is the Lafrague, but other than that, we just and even that one we use as secondary and tertiary. We don't use it as the base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's just complements more than an actual main ingredient. So I guess Scotch whiskey, we'll keep it to the single ingredient cocktail until somebody can blow us away with it.
Right. I mean, and I'm not saying don't get out there and try. I'm just saying, maybe there's hills that we don't need to climb,
Yeah, I mean, when I do order a cocktail, I like when I go out to restaurants, I do always look at the cocktail list, because most places they don't have a very good selection of single malts. So I'm like, all right, what interesting cocktails? And if I'm going to do a whiskey-based one, it's almost always rye or bourbon, because I feel like those are they're more recognized, they're more common, they're more made well. So that's usually what I go after.
I see somebody noted the Casualty. That's a cocktail from my bar. Created by a guy named Chris Elford, and it's a delicious cocktail for sure. But again, I don't think it's elevated itself to recognizable status. Yeah. I'm sure there are plenty of one-off cocktails from different bars and restaurants all over the place that are delicious, but they haven't elevated themselves. And this could be a two-way street here. Is it because they don't get promoted enough, or is it because there aren't enough people who are Scotch drinkers who are willing to let go of their glass of Scotch and trade it in for a Scotch cocktail? Yeah. And then also there's the tremendous amount of polarization that Scotch has in the first place. Scotch came on the scene hard and polarized everybody. It was either I enjoy, and also why did it polarize everybody? I believe truly peat. Right? Mm-hmm. Peat. People are like, I don't like Scotch because I don't like peat. We've had nothing peaty here tonight. So
exactly.
This is great Scotch. They're an easy drinker for anybody who thinks they enjoy whiskey of any kind. I think they'd be right in line with all this. But that polarization is out there as well, and like Mezcal hit the scene, and that same polarization was there because of the smokiness, but it somehow overcame it, and now Mezcal is like a runaway freight train,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now you see all the celebrity mezcal companies pop up all over the place, and I'm sure that's a story for another day. But
right, there aren't a lot of celebrity scotches out there.
No, not at all. I can't even think of one. I know some celebrity Irish whiskeys, but not many Scotch whiskeys out there.
Yeah, you got McGregor in the Irish whiskey. Yep. You got just a million tequila mezcals. You've got a few American whiskeys. But I
Yeah.
can't think of a single celebrity Scotch.
Yeah, neither can I. Not off the top of my head. I guess it's kind of their own exclusive club. But yeah, I mean, it is a common misconception because most Scotch whiskey is not peated, but people have that association that it's a peated whiskey, which actually is a good segue because our next dram, the Kilkerran 8-year-old, is a moderately peated whiskey. Now, have you ever had anything from Kilkerran?
I don't think so.
No, I did send you the sampler, right? Kilkerran 8? Yeah. All right, perfect. So Kilkerran is from the Glengyle distillery in my favorite region of Scotland, which is Campbelltown. There's only 3 distilleries there right now. This is the sister distillery to Springbank, my personal favorite distillery. And this one, it has got a lot going on. It's aged 8 years in recharred Oloroso sherry casks. So you're going to get that rich sherryness to it. But then you're going to get that Campbelltown funk and that peat kind of integrated behind it. And you can tell from the nose, it's just a very unique, it's a very unique nose.
Yeah, it's not, I wouldn't say it's sitting by a campfire. It's not smacking me in the face.
No, not at all. But you can get some of that background peat just on the nose. I can definitely get some of that sherried influence.
Sure.
And then like that maybe slight sulfuriness in the background too.
Oh man, I hate to so very quickly change my tune, but this is now my favorite one.
Oh yeah. So
this has an amount of char. It's not smoke. It's char. This one has an amount of char that I'm really enjoying. This one doesn't taste like it's been through a smokehouse. This tastes like it ran through a smokehouse that burned down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's gonna come. Yeah, absolutely. So these were aged and recharred Oloroso sherry casks. So the combination of charring that Oloroso sherry definitely gets you some of that charred meatiness to it.
Sure, and whatever sugars were left behind in that wood from the sherry, really caramelized. And this is like, this has those like, I don't know, coffee, toffee, but in a way that's like, I don't know, charred, burnt, and then coffee, burnt caramel.
And it's much spicier, obviously. This is bottled at 57.1% ABV, so.
Yeah, I looked at the bottle, and honestly, after my first sip, I thought that was maybe a mistake because it certainly doesn't feel like that. This is it doesn't. This is a very belying whiskey. I would have guessed it to be no higher than like 45, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the cool things about this whiskey is that if you have a bottle of it, you can play around a little bit with the water content and just kind of see how it evolves or changes with a little bit of water. And this one came out in 2019, and it was instantly a favorite among the whiskey community. You can't buy this bottle anymore, unfortunately, but it is just so interesting. It's got so much going on, and you would, if in a blind tasting, you would think this was older than 8 years old. It's a fairly young whiskey for the most part. Yeah,
it is shocking that it's only 8 years old, especially. You know, we don't think of Scotch. I think, you know, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. Let's go back to my chef days. I think of the planet itself as my oven, right? Yeah. And if I'm going to do a tray of whatever, cookies, in they go. And I know that I'm going to have a hot spot, a sweet spot, and a cool spot. That's why we got to rotate the tray, right?
Yeah.
So as a distiller, if I think of the planet as an oven, then I would think that the hot spot is down in Mexico. Right. I would think the sweet spot is the Southeast United States, and the cool spot is up in Scotland. Yeah. And that's why, you know, we can grab a bottle of tequila that's a reposado or even an añejo and look at the color of it, and it'll have a similar color from being cooked in that barrel as, you know, a 4 to 7 year old American whiskey, and the same color in maybe, you know, a 24 year old Scotch, right? Because it's not cooking as hard or as fast, right?
Yeah,
so
I mean,
it is powerfully shocking to me that this is an 8 year old.
Yeah, and I mean, if you know, a lot of the color comes from what was in the barrels prior.
Of course.
So, I mean, this was the 23-year-old whiskey, and it's very light. And you compare this to the 8-year-old sherry cask, much, much darker.
Right.
But that's solely from the sherry cask, as opposed to an ex-bourbon or a virgin oak. But to your point, maturation happens much more rapidly, closer to the equator. That's why you can get like a 5-6 year old Taiwanese whiskey that is similar in depth to like a 20-year-old Scotch whiskey because of the heat that's it's being aged in.
This is great, and I want to tell you kind of straight up that it's infuriating a little bit because you gave it to me, and I proclaimed pretty immediately that it's now my favorite so far, and then you immediately told me I can't get it.
Yeah, so I apologize, but I'll be happy to send you some more samples of it if you really like it. And a lot of whiskey is mood dependent. Today the Kilkerran 8 might be your favorite. Sure. Tomorrow the Ancnoc 24 might be your favorite. Sure. But they still do come out with Kilkerran 8-year-olds. They're a different batch every year. It was a 2019 one that was raved about, but they did just come out with a 2021 that was released recently. So that one is still accessible. I don't think it was quite as highly regarded, but you'll get similar characteristics.
Yeah, this is delicious whiskey.
Yeah, this is really outstanding.
Like the aroma is very beguiling and intriguing, and the flavor. I mean, right as soon as it hit my palate, I was in love.
Oh yeah. No, this is such a well-made, complex whiskey. Kilkerran knocked it out of the park. And another great thing about this one was, in the UK at least, the value of this bottle you could have gotten for like $40-50, which is insane for such a dynamic whiskey. In the United States, it was closer to about $100. Even at $100, it's a good value. But Kilkerran is still a distillery that, obviously in the United States, not super well known, but has a huge cult following in the UK.
It's good to know they drink their own juice.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
When I travel, another one of my great loves is brandy, specifically cognac and even more so Armagnac. And when I traveled around in that part of the world, I was shocked I went to the BNIC, which I can't remember exactly what that stands for, but it's the governing body over the production and sale of and methodology behind making cognac and Armagnac. And, they sat us down for a little talk with pie charts and such. And 2% of all of the cognac produced in cognac is consumed in the country of France.
Only 2%.
They don't drink their own juice.
Wow, that is amazing.
They chalk that up to the notion that the general populace considers cognac and Armagnac to be the drink of the elderly.
Interesting. All right, so it's a generational thing.
So they drink an inordinate percentage of American whiskey and, of course, vodka.
Yeah.
Instead of drinking the thing that's made in their own backyard. All right, so we on to Compass Box, no name.
Compass Box, no name. Yep. So this one is another blended malt, and this one is 75.5% Ardbeg 13-year-old, 13.4% Clynelish, 15-year-old Clynelish, and then 10.6% 16-year-old Kalila.
Now this is amazing because again we had the Clynelish earlier, right? The very first one, and I don't know that. I don't know them at all. But I know both Ardbeg and Kalila, so I'm excited to try this one. Yeah, so Clynelish is very frequently used, like I mentioned earlier, in Johnnie Walker blends, and its classic characteristic is its waxiness, and it adds so much to a blend. Like, it's such a nice filler for a blend, especially one that's peated like this. I am shocked that this is almost 10 points lower, and the nose on this is much more aggressive than that Kilkerran. Yeah, because is that maybe the peat that you're smelling? Just the ABV, honestly, the alcohol. Yeah. I mean, behind that, of course, is all the aromas, and I'm getting some peat, but no, it's that the burst of alcohol in your olfactory sense. Yeah. And that might be because the sherry cask might have mellowed out that Kilkerran a little bit. This one is mostly ex-bourbon matured. But yeah, just on the nose, I get a lot of sweetness. I get that smoke. Yeah, but it's a light smoke. It's not like aroma-wise. It's a pretty light aroma of smoke. Mm-hmm. But as soon as it gets in your mouth, it is smoky. It's like just kissed a smoker. Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. And it's not quite as smoky and ashy as a single malt Ardbeg. That Clynelish really kind of helps settle that down a little bit, and then the Kalila tends to be a little bit more of a bonfire smokiness that's kind of paired well with it. So for me, this is like an expertly made blended peated whiskey. Yeah, I'm also getting I don't know, sea vibes. Like like charred shrimp shells. Oh, interesting. Yeah. You
No, not at all.
You know, like when I'm making shrimp stock and I'm going to char the shells first. So I've got a charred stock.
No, I like that. I like that analogy. And I mean, so many of these barrels are aged by the sea. So I mean, if you're getting some coastal characteristics, that's completely normal.
Yeah, it's given me this, this very sort of seafood stock vibe.
I feel like this would be a good pairing for something like that, like a nice seafood dish or stew.
Yeah, some really hard grilled shrimp, good char on the outside, or crab even.
Mm-hmm.
It's very savory, super umami scotch.
Oh yeah.
But also, not to take away, it still has these little lofty hints of floral and honeyed sweetness and
yeah, without a doubt. And that's what makes this one so nice, is that it has that background of fruitiness that the kind of the dirty smokiness kind of coats, which adds like a really nice flavor profile to it. Again, this is the No Name #1. This came out in 2017. You can still find it in some stores, but it's becoming a rare asset these days.
Wow, that savory quality to this one is really exciting.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, none of these so far has made me say to myself, I want to eat something with this.
Yeah.
This one says, let's eat.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's actually a great point. I could see this being paired with a lot of dishes.
Yeah, like, again, none of them said to me, don't eat, but none of them said, let's have something to snack on. This one's saying, I would love a glass of this and like a large, U10 size grilled shrimp on the side to kind of eat as I sip on it.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And what's cool about our whole lineup tonight is every single whiskey is vastly different from the next one. They're all so unique and interesting in their own ways, which is why I love Scotch so much, is just because you can have so many different experiences. And this is only just a drop in the bucket compared to the different flavor profiles you can get out there.
Yeah, I can see that your affliction, I'll call it, to Scotch is right up in there with mine towards Amari. No two are alike. Everyone has its own characteristics and personality and potential uses. And I call it the 2 Fs when I tell people about them. I'm like, it's either going to be fascinating or frustrating.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going to want to try and be like, well, this one's like this one. You're going to want to try and make these connections that don't fucking exist. So that's either going to frustrate you or fascinate you. And for me, it's fascinating. Oh yeah. So here I am, and I built an entire bar based on it.
Absolutely. So, speaking of your bar, the Amor y Amargo, what's like the main concept behind that? Why should somebody go to your bar? So, what's the best way to experience it?
With an open mind, I'd say would be first. So we just turned 11 during the pandemic. We have the world's largest collection of Amaro and tincture bitters in the world. That's the world's largest. Maybe I've had a few drinks now. Our space, we expanded during the pandemic, but for the first 10 years of our existence, we were in a former closet. It was the dry storage to the place that we ended up taking over. We were renting that space from them, and they didn't make it through the pandemic. So, if I was renting a room in your home and you didn't make it through the pandemic, my choice is to either move out or buy the home. So we bought it. Figuratively, the bank still owns it. But 240 square feet, I used to say, of pure awesome, right? Now we have 2 rooms, so it's much larger. So the way to experience it is to come in with an open mind and then understand kind of our rules, which are for us only. We don't really have any rules for the guests. Come in and have a great time. That's what I want you to do. But our rules are easily summed up with a statement: my only non-alcoholic ingredient is water. I have flat, frozen, and bubbly. Right? So this means I have water, I have ice, and I have seltzer. Everything else that goes into the glass or mixing glass is alcohol. People forget all the time that bitters are alcohol, right? Vermouth, Amaro, bitters, and of course spirits. During the pandemic, we won world's best spirits selection from Tales of the Cocktail, the world's largest cocktail conference that happens every summer. Which, by the way, I leave on Saturday to go down for this year's conference. First time I've been down in 2 years. They haven't held it live and in person for 2 years. And that was really because of my Amaro and Vermouth selection, because I only carry about 20 spirits. As mentioned, I only have 1 bourbon, 2 ryes, 2 scotches. I have a reposado and a blanco tequila. Really just covering the bases on the spirit side, but then taking all comers in the Vermouth, Amaro, and bitter zone. And so again, if we don't have any juices, that you were brave enough to tell me you don't know anything about mixology. So if we don't have any juices, then that means that all of our cocktails are stirred. We don't shake anything ever.
Yeah.
We haven't for 11 years. So they're all spirit forward because that's all I've got.
Yeah.
And they're all stirred, and they're all really built around the notion of getting to know and understand Amaro, bitters, and vermouth. So, I always say, there's no better place to get an education than at a bar. And if that is true, and I believe it is, then Amor y Amargo is university level.
Yeah. And you know what? I think for a whiskey enthusiast, going to a bar like that is like the ideal situation for exploring different flavor profiles, because it's all alcohol, and then being able to manipulate the flavor profiles like all the lineup we're having tonight is I feel like would be so appealing to somebody like me or any of the whiskey enthusiasts out there.
Well, one of the things we do to encourage that sense of curiosity in our guests is we offer almost every single bottle on the back bar. You can get anything you want by the ounce, right?
Yeah.
But almost all of it is $8 an ounce.
Yeah.
Right. I'll make you cocktails. Those are going to cost you $16 or $17. That's just the world we live in. Sorry, I can't help that. But you can still come in and get an ounce. You don't even set yourself up with a tasting. If you want 5 different ones, great. You want 20, I've got plenty.
Yeah.
And just drink them by the ounce and discover them on your own. And my team is extremely knowledgeable. We go through a lot of training and rigors to make sure that we all are up to speed on what's on the back bar.
Yeah.
We have different techniques that we employ to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. For instance, when we get a new product on the bar, something new for us anyway, I order 4 bottles, and they do not go on the back bar where you can see them. They're hidden, and the team and I drink those 4 bottles, and we take notes in a notebook that we keep right there next to them. And then we write like what we might want to do with this in a cocktail, how we'd use this, what's its flavor profile, like any weird facts you might know about it, whatever. And then once we're very comfortable with that bottle, we put it on the back bar so someone can see it, and then we can move forward. Because if we put it up there on day one and we don't know anything about it, the first guy that walks in the door is going to be like, "What's that one?" And we don't know anything. And we look like idiots, and now we're failing. We're failing as the professors at this university. So we're very driven and meticulous, and we're excited about it, and we hope that enthusiasm translates to the guest when they come in, and that curiosity overwhelms them, and they have to try something on the menu, a cocktail, and then they have to try an Amaro, and many folks come in and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm from the Czech Republic, and I haven't seen Bekarovka since I was a child, and there it is. Can I have a glass of that?" "Yeah, of course." "Can you make me a cocktail with it?" "You got it, 100%. Let's go."
Yeah.
So that's the experience that I want people to have when they come to the bar.
Yeah, no, and that's and that's what drinking should be about. Just the whole, the entire experience between the flavor profiles and the history and the story behind it. And I do love the idea of the ounce samples, because one of my favorite bars in the city is Copper and Oak, and they do the 1 ounce Scotch servings or the whiskey servings, and it just allows you to experience so many different flavors throughout the night. So that's such a cool thing to have. So final pour of the night, we have a rum. So this is called Foursquare. This is one of my favorite rum distilleries. It's in Barbados. This is a whiskey drinker's rum, bottled at cask strength, matured in ex-bourbon cask, aged for 12 years. Using the distillation, they use both column and pot still for the distillate here. So this is a very nice rum. And I always like to finish a dram, especially a flight that had a peated whiskey towards the end, with a nice bold sweet, either rum or bourbon. So this one I felt like would be a good conclusion, a nice dessert dram for the night.
Sure. I am familiar with Foursquare. Again, before the pandemic, we had a bar called Mother of Pearl. Mother of Pearl was all rum. Yeah. So I've got some experience with Foursquare.
Yeah. Yeah, they are one of the best rum makers out there, because rum in general, it has a pretty poor reputation. There's really no regulations on adding sweeteners or coloring or all that kind of stuff. Foursquare does it right. This is all natural. This is cask strength. This is just pure rum at its finest.
Do you know of a gentleman named Bailey Pryor from Real McCoy Rum?
I know Real McCoy Rum, but I don't know Bailey Pryor.
Great guy. Bailey Pryor's real job is he is a documentary filmmaker. He's made 116 documentary films. And he's won 5 Emmys, so his odds aren't great. His odds aren't great. But he won those 5 Emmys for one film that he made, where it was about the real McCoy, right? It was about Bill William McCoy, who was the rum runner during Prohibition. But because of that, he literally went and created the brand and resurrected it. You know, it was a rum that existed, and it fell out of favor after Prohibition and was lost to time. But the reason I bring him up is what you're just talking about, is how the regulations for rum are so lax or frankly non-existent.
Yeah.
Some of the more noteworthy rum brands are banding together to start to create a set of guidelines, at least, if not rules, on how rum is made and labeled, which is not dissimilar, frankly, to what happened in the Scotch world back in late 70s, early 80s is when everything started to be like, well, this is a Highland and this is a Lowland and this is a Speyside. Just not moving in and saying change the way you make your product, but moving in and saying let's define it. And then other people can make a product and say, well, mine is this style or what have you. So, and they're calling themselves the Guardians. So I don't know, like the Guardians of the Galaxy, I guess. But this is in motion. This is happening. Will it be completed within our lifetimes? Who knows? But at least the ball is in play, and one day we'll get that. Because I think rum, because it's made nearly anywhere, I think it is. Obviously, that makes it and without any rules, makes it obviously one of the most misunderstood categories out there. But it also makes it then, of course, quite daunting, and it scares people away.
Yeah, absolutely. Because most rums in the store are either going to be mixer rums or ones that just you can't
full of sugar or caramel color or who knows what. Like just basically grain neutral distillate that's been colored and flavored or.
Yeah, but there's definitely a few trusted rum brands out there, Foursquare being one of them. Another one is called Holmes K, and one of my favorite rums, actually probably my favorite rum I've had to date, was their South Pacific distilled rum from Fiji. It was a 17-year-old rum aged in ex-bourbon, I think, and it is just exceptional. But this one that we have here, this is such a nice rum.
The nose on this one is... unlike earlier when I said stewed pineapple about, I forget which one, this one has a very fresh pineapple flavor or aroma. Like you just whacked one open right down the middle and you just put it right up in your face.
Yeah, very tropical, without a doubt.
Which also, if you really get into a pineapple and smell it, it's got some, not to be trite, but it's got some almost pine aroma, right? Yeah. That sort of green, sappy aroma from the skin of it. So you get a lot of that right off the nose, and it's hot. I can tell it's hot.
60%. Yeah.
Just from smelling it. Yeah. So 120 proof. It's going to light us up. I'm glad I only drank half of all these.
Yeah. So you have something to revisit later. Yeah. No, without a doubt.
Oh my gosh. And again, this one is 120 proof. Would not have guessed that in years. No. It drinks so easily. This is the kind of rum that you really want because it tastes great. It's well made. And you're going to get just cranked up because you're going to drink it faster than you think you could because it's 60%.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, and this one, you could use this in a mixer, but it's just so well crafted as is. You really don't need to add anything to it. It's just such a beautiful rum.
Yeah, again, a rum like this that's got a personality of its own, I would certainly drink as is or in an old fashioned. But I would use this in cocktails. I would simply use it as the secondary or tertiary or even quaternary ingredient. Yeah. Is this the final ingredient in your house, zombie recipe? Is this a floater on top of a frozen painkiller? Is this it's got some definite potential in the cocktail world, but it is really delicious rum.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I really love having a nice sweet dram like this after that peated whiskey we just had. It just kind of cuts through that peat so well, and it's on your palate, and it's such well made.
Yeah, and I was also about to say it's not really my style either. I think it's hitting my palate in a very pleasant way right now because we've just walked down this road of scotches. This is, for me, frankly, too sweet to drink on its own. Yeah, I might have a little. I don't know, frosty cold island style pilsner or lager, and a little neat pour of this on the side that I go back and forth with. But it would be a one off, and it would be probably early in my evening. I wouldn't want this later. A little too sweet for my palate later. Yeah. But I could see beginning my evening poolside with a frosty cold beer and some of this, and then moving into some cocktails and whatever.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And I added a couple of drops of water just to kind of mellow it out a little bit, kind of cut through a little bit of that sweetness, which does help a little bit. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I save it, because I wouldn't want to have this first in a flight of whiskeys, because this would really saturate your palate and kind of distort the subtleties of a whiskey. So it's perfect at the end of a flight of whiskeys, for sure.
Sure, but oddly, I would say in the world of rum, if we were doing a 6-part or a 5-part, I guess, flight of rums, this would fall in the middle.
All right, yeah.
Right? You know, you'd want something a little bit lighter and brighter to start, and you'd want something even heavier and darker and sweeter to finish. So this would be in the middle. Again, it being 60% is shocking to me.
You know, when you have a well-made spirit, the high ABV can be basically overshadowed, and it just adds that depth and complexity to it, that it's not going to be blowing up your nostrils, it's not going to be too spicy, it's just going to be just right. I mean, it's 60% ABV. This drinks very well.
Yeah, a little Goldilocks.
Mm-hmm.
It's just right.
Yeah, without a doubt. All right, so I've got a few questions for you just to kind of finish off the evening. They're fun questions, nothing too serious. If you could only have one cocktail for the rest of your life, which cocktail are you picking?
I think I've been asked this before, and the answer still remains the same. It would be an old fashioned. And here's why. I think I'm hacking the system on the question itself. The old fashioned is defined as sugar, water, spirits, and bitters. So this means that I can have, of course, rye whiskey, white sugar, Angostura bitters, some water from the dilution of the ice, or just adding some water. But it also means that I could have, one of these delicious scotches and honey syrup and even honey bitters, which I have one of. And that's still an old fashioned, right? So I feel like I'm hacking the system by saying an old fashioned, because I think that there's an untold number of old fashions available.
Yeah, so you can basically, one cocktail is dozens of cocktails.
If not thousands.
Yeah, or thousands of cocktails, without a doubt. No, that's a great answer. And, old fashions, you'd think they would be fairly straightforward to make. But one of the worst cocktails I've ever had was at Daniel in New York City. I ordered an old fashioned. I wasn't, I did nothing on the cocktail list interested me. And there was so much crushed ice in the old fashioned that it was just watered down. Like yeah, it was awful. And yeah, and you go to a nice restaurant, you'd hope that the mixologist would be decent, but unfortunately it didn't pan out.
It's been a mystery to me as a former culinarian, and always, I'm still, in my company right now, I'm the beverage director for the entire company. We have 10 locations in the East Village and one that we just opened in LA, and we're about to open one out in Boulder. So I'm the beverage director for the entire company. I'm also the culinary advisor. Right. So I step in and tweak things, or ask people to change their mind about something, or coach the chefs along. So I'm still quite a culinarian, but I do know back from my days in restaurants that for whatever reason, the bar is an afterthought often. Mm-hmm. I worked for a Michelin-starred chef, and he was very focused on making the delicious food and selling delicious wine. But like, the margin on booze is great. Why are you leaving this on the table? You've got the booze. And I would say it's only been relatively recently that a restaurant like you said you were at Daniel or Balud?
Daniel,
yeah, Daniel. It's only been relatively recently that like Daniel or Le Bernardin, or even per se and the French Laundry, to go out to California, have added cocktails to their menu. They have all the booze sitting there, and they just expect people to walk up and ask for something. I put that in the same camp as when I say. There are plenty of bars out there who don't have menus. Like, you just consult with the bartender. And I love that. It's an intimate experience. However, from the guest's point of view, what do you think is easier, for them to read a menu or to write one?
Yeah, exactly.
So if I've got no menu at all, my choice paralysis, what do I do with that? The sky's the fucking limit? No, that can't be true. Show me what you do here, and I'll pick one. So it's shocking to me how long it's taken for finer establishments to finally come around to the notion that there's money to be made over the bar. And the way to make it is to train yourself and be good at making cocktails. So does it surprise me that you got a shitty, overly iced old fashioned at a place with a reputation as Daniel Balud has? Yeah, but not entirely.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of a shame too, because obviously going to a fine restaurant is is all about the culinary experience and the unique flavors that the food brings to you. And you would think that making a cocktail, which is the same concept just in liquid form, would be a high priority for them, but it's not. It's an afterthought. Like you said, it's a shame.
You just nailed it. You know, my bio on Instagram or Twitter or one of them is I used to be a chef. Now I just make chilled soup.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. I do apply those same mentalities.
Yep.
But for me, it's the same. I'm just taking flavors and I'm combining them in a way that's going to make a new flavor that's delicious and desirable.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand why other chefs and restaurateurs don't get that. While we're wrapping up this interview, I'm going to go back to the Kilkerran 8.
Oh yeah, yeah. And, you know, I'll pour a drop of that too to cap us off. And you know, when you get like a really well-made cocktail right before your meal, you like that's a game changer for the restaurant. Your whole perception of your experience changes with that like deliciously crafted cocktail.
Cocktails excite the palate. They get your digestive system activated, and if you're on an empty stomach, activating your digestive system just means that it makes you hungry. It makes you ready to eat. So why would I say sit at the bar and have a glass of wine, and then sit at the table and have a glass of wine? Sit at the bar before your meal and have a cocktail or two.
Oh yeah,
and get yourself in the mood. You know, I think that's another thing too. It's I don't blame it all on the restaurants. I blame it kind of on the consumer as well. You and I, we're the consumer. And I think that a lot of us, not me and hopefully not you, we've gotten past that point. We make a reservation for 7 o'clock and we go get seated at 7 o'clock. Mm-hmm. I make a reservation at 7. I show up at 6:15. I want to sit at the bar for a minute.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And when I get there, they're like, oh, you're early. Do you want your table now? And I'm like, no, I'm going to the bar. I'm going to have a civilized cocktail like a well-rounded human. Then I'll go to the table. Or if it's available, I'll eat here at the bar. Mm-hmm. I think there's just, I don't know, there's some fundamental changes that have happened both in service style and the way that we approach being served. You know?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Again, everything's at least a two-way street.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my wife and I always try to start a meal with a cocktail, so that's where we always gravitate towards, unless there's nothing on that it intrigues us on the menu. So, I mean, but that's usually our go-to is a cocktail over any other form of beverage at a restaurant. And so, another question, random. What is the best appetizer at a restaurant?
I mean, that depends on who you are, I guess. Yeah. You know, don't forget my entire company, Overthrow Hospitality. You know, we're mostly restaurants and some bars. The company was formed during a pandemic. I had bars before the pandemic. I closed a bunch of them. I kind of, one of my partners at one of them, I joined his company, and now we joined and created the company. He already had a bunch of venues that were mostly restaurants. But everything we do at Overthrow Hospitality is vegan.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're a vegan, maybe, and I'm not, by the way, I used to be a butcher. I taught at a culinary school. I was a chef for a long time. I do eat less meat, or I eat meat more ethically now than I used to, I think. You know, for Christmas, I bought myself a half a heritage pig from a local farmer, and I'm going to eat every single bite of it. And I'm going to prepare it well. Nothing's going to be wasted. That pig lived its life for a good reason.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think that's who you are. And I grew up on the beach. I'm a crazy person for seafood. Even for lunch today, I had lunch. I'll tell you what it was, but just even the night before, last night, I was at a bar and I had the same thing, and I even talked about it already today in this talk. I love a well done, plump, juicy, moist, delicious shrimp cocktail. That to me says sophistication, style, class. It also says to me barefoot, toes in the sand. It says to me, you know, a nice glass of wine. It says to me a martini, a Gibson. It says to me a beer, right? Like it's somewhat universal to me. If I can get a cocktail on ice, that's where I'm at.
Or after tonight, a little bit of that no name right here. That would pair very well with that shrimp cocktail, without a doubt. No, that's a great answer, without a doubt. All right, 2 more questions for you. What's the most unusual thing you've ever eaten?
I mean, I don't think anything I've eaten is unusual to me. But I think that certainly a lot of the offal I've eaten in my life is unusual. Again, I bought that half a heritage pig for myself. You can go back to my Instagram and reels and stuff, and you can see where I made head cheese, which It's common to me. I was a butcher for a long time. I'm a sausage maker, charcuteur, etc. But I did, again, I got half the pig. They split them lengthwise, by the way, not this way. Everyone always asks. So I got half the brain. And so I ate a delicacy where I'm from in the deep South. I grew up on the North Gulf Coast of Florida. It's very common to eat brains and eggs. So to me, I don't think it's unusual. But when someone asks me something, I say, well, I eat pig brains.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I think for the average consumer, that would be fairly unusual. But and I'm sure you enjoy it because it's part of your background.
Sure. You right into eggs. They have a similar texture to the scrambled eggs themselves, but they have a flavor that's a little bit kind of irony. Like if you've ever eaten sweetbreads, they have a texture that's in the same zone as sweetbreads. They're great, and they're quite good. They're quite good for you as well.
All right, no, that's great. That's a very very unique answer. Something that I haven't heard yet in all my Instagram lives. So I like it. I like the answer. All right, I'll get you out of here on this last question. If you're going to share a dram or a cocktail with 4 famous people, dead or alive, who are you picking?
Wow, it's funny. People ask this question of people all the time, and I've never had it asked of me, so I'm not really prepared. I would say, because I drink so much Old Overholt Rye Whiskey, I would say I think I would need to have Abe Overholt at the table.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Just so I could maybe give him thanks and props for imbuing me with so many great memories and great times in my life. I would say, I would want to sit down with maybe someone a little bit unusual here. I'm struggling to think of her name right now. The woman who led the temperance movement, she went around with a hatchet and hacked up bars. I can't think of her name at the moment.
Isn't it like something Nation?
Carrie Nation. Thank you.
Carrie Nation. There we go.
I'd want to sit down with her and have a drink and say, what exactly, drove you to a place where you thought that this product was so inherently evil? When again, it brings such, certainly it gets people in trouble, but you can't take away cars because people get in trouble in a car. It brings more good than evil. And what made you feel so bad about it? So someone like her would be great. And then maybe more modern people, I would say, I don't know, someone who's out there and on the edge and making trouble and making waves, like Bill Burr, great comedian.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of opinions. I think he maybe even had a little issues with alcohol in his life. So maybe he'd be a great person to have a drink with and get his perspective.
Oh yeah.
And then I'd probably want to sit down with someone who's got their finger on the pulse of, American politics, which are in such strife right now. So I would say someone, as controversial and visible as like AOC. She's a New Yorker. I've been in New York for 22 years. She's out there getting into good trouble, making noise and trying to do the right thing for everyone. And I don't know. So it's a very crazy group of people.
Yeah, but the crazier the group, the more intriguing the conversation.
The more conversation we'd have. So we have Abe Overholt, Carrie Nation, Bill Burr, and AOC at the table.
No, that's awesome. That sounds like a great table. One that I would be interested in to hear the conversation that you guys had. That'd be fantastic. Right. But I thank you for joining me here tonight. I know you're a busy guy. You have a lot of things going on. You're working, I guess, later tonight. So I appreciate you jumping on here. When you get to the second half of the samples I sent you, the second half ounces, let me know if your opinions change or you have any different thoughts with them.
Yeah, we'll do. Will do. And I would encourage you. Thanks for saying that, because I would encourage your viewer here, your followers everywhere, to understand that this was blind for me. I haven't tasted any of these, and your blind interpretation of things is often not your final answer. In fact, I think it almost never is.
No, never.
Like I said, we drink through 4 bottles. And by the way, there's only 6 of us who work there, right? Mm-hmm. So we're drinking nearly a bottle apiece to formulate our opinion on everything that we get. But because again, yeah, it'll change. Did you have it right after lunch? Did you have it right before lunch? Did you just brush your teeth? Did you just come in from a really hot day on your bike going over the Williamsburg Bridge?
Yeah.
Were you in an interview at the time, so you're having to pay attention to more things than one? I like quiet reflection. I'm generally the guy who comes in early to work and tastes through things while no one's in the room. Or maybe I taste them again late at night when everyone's gone. And I take notes, copious notes. I have, fucking moleskins all over the place from my years past. And then now, of course, I take notes in my iPhone or whatever. But I take a lot of notes. I taste everything. I smell everything. I go to the farmer's market. I'm smelling and tasting everything I can, just so I can create that file system in my brain about what things are and what they taste like. So when I pick up a glass, I can smell it and I go, man, this smells like loquats. And people are like, what the fuck's a loquat? I'm like, well, you got to go down to the Asian market and smell them and taste them. So you have this in your own Rolodex, So thanks for saying that. I didn't drink them all. This one I am. I'm almost done with it. But I didn't drink them all, and I will revisit.
Yeah, no, and I 100% support that because, and then that's one of the things that when I don't review things very often, but when I do, I actually make sure I actually finish the entire bottle, because your experience as the bottle kind of drops down, it oxidizes a little bit, your palate develops, is completely different. And like you said, the foods you ate before, the whiskeys you had, if you were exercising, like so many different things impact your experience with what you're drinking, that you need to experience that under different conditions to really get a full evaluation on how you actually like this stuff and what the flavor profiles are. So it makes a difference.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
But again, thank you for joining me. I'm gonna get down to your place, Amor y Amargo, at some point over the next few weeks, hopefully, and I'll reach out to you to make sure you're in town that day. And I'll bring some more samples. I can bring you more of that Kilkerran, and I can bring you some of that cognac and some more interesting whiskeys that we can share together.
I love it, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I hope you have a good night, and I will we'll be in touch.
Yeah, here's that quick pan.
Oh yeah. Let's take a look. Oh, that's awesome. All right.
There's a lot of shit.
No, that's good. The more, the better.
All right, buddy. Someone's buzzing my door. I gotta go. But it was very nice hanging out with you. Thanks so much for the opportunity. And anybody who's in your camp can come check out my bars and check out everything I do at Creative Drunk and check out my radio show. And in fact, maybe we should have you on the show soon.
Yeah. Anytime. Let me know. I'll be happy to join you guys.
Cool, man.
All right.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Yep.